Legends, I hope you're all awesome. I've got the Quad Cortex on the bench today, and I want to take a look at some of the new effects and features which have been added in recent firmware updates. It has been over a year since I did my initial video with this unit. I've done another video focusing on some custom captures that I've shared. You can go into the Cortex cloud and check those out for yourself and see if they work for your particular taste and style. But one thing that I did make a point about at the initial launch was that the effects section felt a little bit undercooked, and they've definitely padded it out since then. So let's take a look at what is new in here and dial in some tones. I'm going to start out with my old Strat, plug straight into the Quad Cortex. I'm coming straight out of the Quad Cortex into my UA interface and then into Pro Tools with no post-processing. I've got this Lone Star amp model, which I've been enjoying on here. The EQ setting is just normal, but I'll play around with this and probably add some more gain to it in just a little bit. I'm rolling with my usual Cabinet IR LT TV mix number 7 over here. You can load an IR into the cab block and it's still going to give you this like skeuomorphic UI on there. But yeah, I'm actually not using any of the built-in cabs. You can get my Cabinet IR in WAV format for free. Just check the video description. And then I've got a little bit of a low cut and a high cut. I've actually saved these settings as the default settings in here. You can do that. Click up here and you can set the parameters as default. So a low cut around 80 Hertz and a high cut around 8K. Pretty standard stuff. And I've got plate reverb on here. This was one glaring omission from the effects at launch. You can see I've got the mix at 20-ish%, decay around 40%, a little bit of pre-delay in there. There's some high pass and low pass. And I'll let you hear what this sounds like. That's a pretty decent starting point, I think. What I would chuck on top of all of that is some compression if I'm just going to play clean. I really like this legendary 87 in here. Let's have a listen to what this does. It's adding a little bit of a boost in there and just thickening everything up. That's the legendary 87, and another new feature in here which I like that they've added is a standalone dual delay mode. If you wanted a stereo dual delay, you kind of needed to use parallel paths and 2 delay blocks. Now you can just kind of set up my favorite settings for a dual delay in here, which would be a quarter note and a dotted eighth note. You do have a cross feedback feature on here. You've got the ability to sync the feedback in here. You've got modulation, you've got a high pass and a low pass. I think the stock settings are actually pretty good and kind of where I like them with the high and the low pass, 120 Hertz and 3K in there. So it's going to sound really lovely and warm. There's also an analog delay in here. I've got it set up as the stereo analog delay, and the defaults are nice and crusty. I've got a dotted eighth note in here, and I'm going to add a little bit of extra width on here and a little bit of extra drive. Let's hear it. One fun little thing that you can do in here with the analog delay, I've got the mono mode now, is crank up the feedback to get it to self-oscillate. And if you've got it synced to the tempo, is just scroll through the different tempo subdivisions and it will change the pitch just like a real analog delay would. does tap out around 200 milliseconds on here, so you can't get it all the way down and super crazy, though it would be cool if they added that feature. All right, I'm going to turn this particular block off here. Let's have a listen to some of the new modulation options in here. And I've really been enjoying this chorus engine effect in here, which I'm guessing is their kind of pimped out deep dive chorus. I'll just let you hear it at the settings I've dialed it into. You've got some interesting options on here. You've got this morph, which I'm guessing is probably changing you between different LFO shapes. And you've got random as well as this voice mode, which can be set to full, thick, open, and broad. I'll just let you hear each of those different options. Things that I like about this is you can adjust the delay time to kind of change the style of the chorus even more. And on the second page, you can set the center frequency for the tone control. You've got the ability to add drive as well as change the clipping shape for the drive. So this is kind of interesting, I guess, if you wanted to emulate old rack units or old pedal unit choruses, something like that. Let's just have a listen to this if I crank the drive up a little bit more and play around with the drive type. That is really enjoyable because, as you can hear, it's adding a really cool, gritty character to our chori in there. I said choruses before instead of chori. What's happening to me? You've got some fun stuff in the chorus, or I guess the modulation block, like there's a 2290 chorus. I'm guessing this has been lifted from the Petrucci Archetype plugin. Got the flanger engine, which is the advanced style flanger, but I kind of like this flanger-ish setting after the cab in here. Let's just have a listen to the stock setting. There's a Phase 95 model in here, which I've placed before the amp. This sounds pretty sweet. Before we move on, let's circle all the way back around and take a look at some more reverbs in here. I talked about the plate. You've got a lush plate option in here. You've got this mind hall. What else do you have? There's a tight plate. There's a shimmer reverb in here. There's a spring reverb. The mind hall is pretty cool. I think this is meant to be based around a lexicon style thing. Let me just hear this. I've turned basically all the other effects off in here except for the amp cab and the little post EQ. Driver and then this Nobels OD1 with that big reverb on there. The Nobels is pretty sweet. There's a few other drives in here which I did not look at in my first video, either because they weren't in there or I just passed over them. So what was the other one I was enjoying? The OCD's pretty sweet in here. You've got standard stuff like the SD1, the Blues driver, the Facial Fuzz, I think the Myth drive. Let's have a listen to this one. I'm guessing that this is kind of like a clone style thing in here. So let's start with the gain all the way down and the level pumped up. What does this do? Let you hear the new freeze effect in here, which is in a block style called Morph. I'll engage the block, and then to turn it on and off, there's just this on and off switch. You can also set it up for momentary operation as well. Now, since you can have multiple instances of blocks, I guess you could set that up for different little chord pads and bring them in and out. Probably with scenes would make the most sense on there, and have some stuff to solo over. I'm not going to look at the looper in this video. I feel like it's probably one of the better loopers out there in any modeling device, and I guess probably just in general, because it's based around the old Echoplex Digital Pro style looping in there, where you can set up loops and you can expand them and you can punch in. Very similar to what the Poly Bebo has set up in it. Obviously, the advantage here is you've got more foot switches on board, so you can assign them to the different functions. But I do want to do a video about the looper in this as just a standalone video. It's a pretty cool effect in there, and you could use it with stuff like the freeze in there and the multiple pathways to come up with some really cool creative effects. What I'm going to do now is just swap over to a filthy sound. I might take the amp and cab out of this and replace it with a capture of my Mark IV that I've shared. One thing that has changed on here is if you're assigning things like the mix control on your delays to change via scenes, it doesn't automatically assign it once you change it from the default parameters. That was one thing that I found a little bit frustrating with the user interface before. For example, if I make sure I'm in scene mode, which I am at the moment, so I think I'm on scene A, that's good. Let's just set this scene up with this block bypass. I'm going to press it and hold it over here. And then this way, if I bypass it in scene A, I go to scene B and I want it engaged, it's going to remember the status per block over there. So you can see that. And then let's say in scene C, I want to have the same delay, but maybe I want the mix slightly lower and I want slightly more feedback on there. I can press and hold this. So I'm going to assign the mix to where it is there. Back on scene B, I wanted my mix a little bit higher, and I'll do the same thing with the feedback over here. So we can set it to different levels in different scenes. In scene B, I might turn the feedback control down a little bit, and then on scene C, I'll have it go back to where it was. That way, I've got my dry tone, then I've got my delay tone. In fact, I actually want this boost bypassed on the first scene as well, and then we'll have it. Cool, so I've got delay and my boost. I'm talking to myself at this point. I'll let you hear it. Once you hear that boosted Mark IV capture and then kick in the 2290 chorus. This is pretty fun and greasy. I'm going to pull up stumps on this particular video here. There's a bunch of things that I did not get time to cover in this particular video. So I want to hear from all of you. What features on the Quad Cortex would you like to see me cover in future videos? I feel like now with most of these effects, it's starting to feel like a kind of finished product on here, if it launched with all of these features, I think people would be far less critical of it. There was a lot of hyperbolic marketing to go with the fact that this was going to be a game changer. And then it was really easy for people like me on YouTube to turn around and go, well, it's a game changer, but you don't have a plate reverb. What's the deal with that? Whereas now you've got nearly all the kind of stock standard effect types covered, as well as some extra features in here. For me, I'm still struggling with the high gain amps in this. I like the captures that I've made of my high gain amps, but I feel like I'm still not getting something out of the high gain amps that I would expect. And the fact that there's no computer editor and they haven't integrated their plugins like they promised is going to be a sticking point for a lot of people. In fact, I would say for me, the computer editor, or the lack of it, is one reason why I haven't been making more videos with this, because it means I have to set up an extra camera to film the screen. And, you know, Neural DSP have really good looking plugins out there. The user interface on those is super slick. I don't see why they haven't got a desktop editor out, especially when stuff like, you know, my Nuix Mighty plug, which costs less than $100 has a computer editor for it. And this is a really premium tier modeler as well. I won't go on about any of that anymore. I will just say, let me know what you would like me to cover in a future video. Let me know what you thought of the tones, and I'll see you all next time. Have a fantastic day. Cheers.